to you.
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Emma Fletcher. I am the chair of the Swaffham Prior Community Land Trust. By way of background, I'm a rural surveyor. I qualified as a rural surveyor, went straight into development. I've worked for agents, I worked for developers. Most recently, I've worked for 4 different housing associations, and then I got poached by Octopus about 18 months ago to leave the housing sector and come in and be the translator between the energy sector and the house building sector. So I've worn lots of different types of hats. I've done lots of community consultations. I've sat in lots of the places where you're sitting in terms of wanting to do things. And if I'm honest with you, it took until I had children to really motivate me to go out and take some action. I just always thought that it seemed blitheringly obvious that people could see all the problems I could see and assume somebody else was going to come along and fix the problem. So it took me a while to work out that I had to be the answer to the problem. And then once I got going, I really got going. So anyhow, I'm here to talk to you on a number of fronts. Probably take questions at the end, but I'll go through it quite rapidly because I think you're a fairly informed bunch. But I just want you to show how we've achieved it and what else we've got in our sights. So Swaffham Prior is a small village just between Cambridge and Newmarket. Some may say it's on the fens. We call it on the edge of the fens. Full disclosure, my husband has webbed toes, my children have webbed toes. In full disclosure, they're both, well, all of them are pretty rubbish at swimming. So our village is very small. We have a pub. We have 2 churches. It used to be 2 parishes very close together. Rumour has it there were sort of feuding families. Each wanted a taller church. So every time one got struck by lightning, the other one made itself a bit taller. And then eventually one of them put a very tall spiky bit on the top just to make it taller than the church next door. We have a water tower. We have a half-form village entry, primary school. We used to have a station, now a house. And we have 2 windmills, one of which makes flour exported all around the country, and one which actually now powers a domestic house. So we've got a random selection of assets, which we try and make the most of. In terms of where we live, very, very typical in terms of a British village. Age does matter. We basically have old homes, and if we're honest with ourselves, old people. We have half the village at least is over 55, and buildings, at least half of them are over 50 years old. The majority of the housing stock is between 100 and 200 years old out of that category. So old homes and an ageing population. And one of the things that I became quite passionate about was making sure that our population was catered for. At the time, I said I had children in the village. I wanted the primary school to keep going. I wanted the pub to keep going. And as I pushed the pram around the village, I thought, really, I'm not seeing very many young people in the village. So I was motivated to set up the Community Land Trust. We have 8 properties, including 2 bungalows. We took the housing needs survey from the council at the time, and we were told that there were 13 households in need, but we were to build 8 homes in need. And basically what we did was a clever model that we nicked from another community land trust down in the West Country, which is we own the freehold of the land. We have a 125-year lease to a housing association. We literally inserted ourselves into the Section 106 process. And really, when it boils down to it, what we want is the nomination rights over those homes. We want those homes to be going to people who live and work in our village. Now, the real sad reflection is we had 8 homes. We went out to the community, 26 households applied, 25 groups of households were correct in their qualification, but we can only offer 8 homes. Every time we advertise one of these homes, we have at least 4 or 5 people apply for one home. So what I'm saying to you is there are shocking statistics out there with the council provide, but they only have to provide the A's and the B's on the list. The real issue is there's people registered as C's and D's on the list. The A's and B's are just the top of the iceberg. So for whatever the council are telling you, I'd say it's about a third of the demand that's really out there. And that's something we learned, and we wish we'd done a few more. So this is Mari. She's one of our retirees that moved into our bungalow. She absolutely loved this bungalow. Very sadly, she's just passed away. But one of the things I would say is that 12 years ago, we installed air source heat pumps in these bungalows and solar on the roof. Air source heat pumps have been around for some time and they're working just fine. So having built the homes, after a couple of years, I got itchy feet and thought, well, what else really annoys me in the village? And what really annoyed me was being on oil. The fact it would be 17 pence at 1 minute, 79 pence the next minute, you really wouldn't know. And during the peak of the Ukraine crisis, it's been £1.18 a litre as well. How can anybody budget for that when you have to buy 500 litres and put that in your tank? So I got fairly motivated and thought, you know what, I'm going to take the village off oil. I listened to a podcast about an engineer that retired to the island of Eve, and he basically took the whole village off mains electricity with wind, wave and solar. And I thought, what if we treat every settlement like an island? What resources have we got available to ourselves? So I happened to have a chance conversation with one of the dads, the kids at the same school, and he said, well, 10 years ago, I tried to bring district heat networks to the UK, but failed miserably. I'm up for giving it a go. So he happens to be the head of RPS, as he's an ecologist. So he and I muddled together some sort of grant application form. All of this was very embryonic. And we went and got ourselves £20,000. With that £20,000, we paid for £1,000 towards a consultant who was a colleague of Mike's in Denmark. And basically, we went forward and we did our first sort of feasibility study of what was the art of the possible. We had some key criteria. One, we didn't want to be burning anything. Two, we didn't want any barriers to entry, so no viability discussions. Everybody could join because we knew that would stop people from then signing up. And then we also really wanted this to be pegged to oil, so nobody could have any excuses why they wouldn't join. Free to join, cheaper than oil, ideally. That was the perfect situation for us. And so we went and appointed bioregional. They did a study for us, and they basically came back and said a district heat network linked to ground source was probably the way forward. They did also propose biomass, but we ruled that out because of the burning criteria. So our initial brief was to establish a low carbon heat network. That was our real criteria, and this is back in 2017. And one of the things we then hit a buffer on was actually you then had to be partnered with a county council or a district council to get the next level of funding. However, fortuitously, the county council happens to own quite a large farm around our village, and on that farm is also... No, EIEO. No, on that farm is also a barn. And on that barn, we thought, oh, that could be an energy centre because the farmer lives down the road and he actually wanted the barn to be closer to his tenanted farmhouse. So actually, he was happy in discussions with us to relinquish the barn. So we came together with the county council, and they have a specific team within the county that is tasked with generating energy from their assets. So it could be schools, it could be park and ride sites, it could be the rural estate. They've got a solar farm, for example, that puts £1 million back into adult social care for the county. So they have really gone hard to invest in energy projects. So we came together with the council, the county council, and unashamedly, unfortunately, we had to say goodbye to bioregional because the county have a framework. So we partnered with their framework partner, Bouygues Energy Services, now rebranded as Equans. And so we went through to our next level of funding, and we got another £40,000 through the Heat Networks Delivery Unit. And then we had to go out and find match funding. And this is where we went to our combined authority mayor, who at the time I'd read a piece of paper that said they were comparing all the mayors. One of the criteria was on sustainability, and one of those criteria within sustainability was heat networks. Now, when you're a rural mayor in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, there isn't many opportunities, but our mayor saw the light and thought, well, I'm not Liverpool, I'm not Manchester, but, you know, this would give him a tick in the box. So they basically provided the £20,000 that meant we could have the match funding, and we went and did a proper feasibility service and started really engaging with the community. We also installed heat meters into 5 different house types in the village, so we could actually see what level of heat demand we would be needing for the heat network. So then we got a little bit more cocky and we thought we're going to push the engineers a little bit more because that's quite fun. And so we decided that we'd actually go to a zero carbon heat network. So that became our sole focus, was how could we actually really drive down the heat network to make it resilient for the future. And so then we marched forward. We put forward in another grant application. This time the match funding came from the county council. And this was the really exciting moment in time because we got to go drill a big hole in the ground and actually see what was the ground conditions like. Now, we're on the edge of the fen, but we actually do sit on a chalk escarpment off the edge of the fen. But the ground conditions are very different to what you expect on above. So the borehole went down 200 metres and basically came back and said, yep, we thought it's going to hold temperature around about 14 degrees. So we did all the surveys, we did a whole load of utilities investigations, which was money not well spent in the village, as I will show you later. But we went out, did the surveys, and really started to try and move it forward. We then went further forward and actually managed to get an application together. This was quite a challenge because at the time we were running up, not that we knew it, into the COVID period. So we got the funding through. COVID then sort of came along, and it was probably the best thing that ever happened to the project because everyone was at home and everyone was happy to do a Zoom call and show us their boiler. Now, there cannot be many exciting moments in time, but when everybody's like, oh, come and see my boiler, it was the highlight of their day. So it was brilliant. We got loads of data back. It did involve a little bit of smart thinking. I happen to know a friend who was a landscape architect a couple of villages along who went on a walk through the village for us and did our landscape impact survey because the person we'd chosen was coming down from Scotland and obviously they couldn't come down. So it really was all hands to the pump. What could we do locally to try and get this planning application in? But it was a brilliant moment in time, a properly community effort to actually get the application in and get the project rolling. And then roll the clock forward. And this was a big surprise. The big surprise probably was the department that was funding us with the money basically said, well, we kept giving you the grants because we wanted to know when you were going to fail. So actually it was a bigger surprise to them that we got to that point as well as us. But we achieved it, we got planning, we got through planning, and basically they came to us and said, brilliant, you've got a fundable project, a fundable investable project. How would you like a £3.2 million grant? To which we said, oh, brilliant, thank you. So all was good. But what I really want to say is it's taken us baby step applications, grant after grant after grant. But actually for us as a project, it really did help. It made us focus on what we had to achieve to get through to the next gateway, to move to the next level of grant on. And I think if we had been given all the money at the beginning, we wouldn't have achieved this project at all because we were ambitious, we were chirpy for the next round. We wanted to prove that we could actually achieve what we set out to do. So what is the final proposal? So after all of our borehole tests and trials, what we have ended up with is we have 108 boreholes in a field that go 200 metres down. We have an industrial air source as well that sits above ground. We have a private wire to a solar farm that the county council happened to be building at the same time, 8 kilometres away. We did get planning permission for solar on the site, but actually it's worked out far more economic to go and join the solar farm off-site. And then we spent a lot of time talking about what is our backup system. And the consultants kept saying we need a backup oil boiling system, we need a backup wood chip system. And then one day, somebody in a meeting, and why it took them so long, came up and said, you could just have 4 big water tanks. Genius. So our backup system for the entire system is 4 big water tanks. So what you've got is you've got boreholes under the ground, industrial air source at the energy centre, 4 big water stores, private wire to a solar farm, and we're sending water down normal, heated, thermally insulated pipes into the village between 68 and 72 degrees. Now, this is different to a lot of heat networks, but we'd done the data on what we needed to get to in our village. And as I said before, we've got a lot of old homes, but we've also got a fairly settled, older, more mature population who do not want to be redecorating their house, who do not want to be stripping back walls, who do not want to be doing anything. So what this is achieving is basically saying, we will take your oil boiler out, we will take your oil tank out, and we will just put in a heat interface unit and it will work seamlessly already with your wet central heating system. Again, smooth, no barriers to entry, we're not disrupting your home, and it will just work. Now that's quite a hard sell to most people, and if you go onto ChatGPT or anything AI online and ask what the Swaffham Prior project is about, there's a gentleman who shall be remain nameless, but he wrote every month in the village paper about how it would never work. The one thing I can generally say, I was out on site this morning, they put his external connection in last week and his internal connection goes in next week. So all I'm saying is that it's not new technology, but there is still fear out there that it will work. But we have proved that it works, and now even the most doubting of people are saying, fine, I want to come and join the system. But it's taken so much time and resilience to hold to the vision that actually all of you there need to support everybody to do it. Because if it wasn't some of my co-directors saying we're doing it, it's fine, it's moving on, to be honest, you probably would have crumpled. Because sometimes the attacks can be very personal when you're just trying to do the right thing. So this is the solar farm. This is the county-owned solar farm that we've tapped into. As I said, it's about 7.5, 8 kilometres as the crow flies away. This is our village, and I thought this was worth sort of showing. So the main bulk of the village are in the 2 green circles, ellipses. The energy centre where the barn used to be is the yellow circle, and the field that we've used for the ground array is in the area shown with the orange circle. So it is a little bit out of the village, and there's a 7.5 kilometre pipe network that goes from the energy centre round the village through the roads. So this is the energy centre from above. There was an existing building, good old wily farmer. When we actually got our hands on the building, it was absolutely shot to pieces. So having got planning permission to convert the barn, we had to go back in for a new planning application because his barn was imperial, new barns are metric, nothing was the same size, the ridge height wasn't the same size. We ran the landscape impact survey for a 20 centimetre increase in ridge height, but we got that through. And then you've got the 4 water tanks from above, literally 4 water containers, and then you've got the industrial air source fan bed you can see from above there to the end. And we run the air source in the summer, because that's when it's most efficient, and we run the ground source in the winter. And that leaves time for the ground just to heat up again. It's not that there's some superheated source from under the ground. We're relying on the sun shining onto the field just to warm up the water that's down in the ground. And this is it from the side. The flue there is just in the emergency because we have effectively compressor fluid inside the energy centre. Should anything go off, the ammonia can vent out of there, but it's for nothing other than safety, security purposes. That's a picture of me just for scale, just so you can see. It's not huge. Just think of it as a normal, regular farm building. The water tanks are a little big, but up here where you've got dairy units, you could think it looks like a small dairy unit. This looks fairly brutal from above. The engineers aren't completely batty. The reason why we've got the wobbly lines down to the boreholes is because there's quite a lot of archaeology. Like yourselves, we have Roman heritage as well in our village. We were the highland off the River Cam floodplain, and we've got a Roman villa in the village. Basically, county archaeologist, enthusiastic chap, nice man, but wants to send every student out there every summer to go dig up your fields. Not helpful when you're trying to deliver a project. So we've left the archaeology for someone else at another point in time to come back and do. The boreholes therefore miss the archaeology. So we've got boreholes in the ground, 108 of them, and then the pipe network runs back up into manifolds and then down to the energy centre. And that's basically what it looks like. So just think a whole pipe going down, pipe coming up, and then back into the energy centre. They're about 80 centimetres below the ground, just so you know as well. This is what I mean about the wasted utility survey. Yes, it did highlight some of the utilities that were in the ground, but again, being a fairly historic village, we thought the tarmac was going to be about 15 centimetres deep. That's maybe on the left-hand side, but on the far right-hand side, it was 1.50 metre on the right-hand side. We found BT boxes we weren't expecting. We found wires and pipes and drainage we weren't expecting. Digging up the road is not easy. We got the biggest hell of abuse from digging up the roads. We have a bypass road that goes past. In somebody's wisdom, we had traffic lights on 4 of those arms on the bypass, that if you drove through on red, all of the limbs went to red. We also had 2 sets of traffic lights in the village with the same system, and one morning some person ran through the top road and sent them all to red, and another person ran through the village, sent them all to red. We caused an 8-mile tailback. The traffic engineers couldn't come to rescue the lights because they were stuck in the tailback. It was utter chaos, and probably officially one of the low points of the project. So we did get a bit of abuse, I'm not going to lie. In the village, we had quite a few climate change deniers. People thought they were getting 100% renewable electricity. They thought that every home should just have a heat pump, and that would be fine, bearing in mind we've got 42 listed properties in the village. We had a whole load of negative press that were put out by the people that were fed up with the traffic lights. We got quite a lot of banter on the village Facebook page. I'm sure you've all got community Facebook pages. There was a problem with seismic activity at the Eden project. Obviously, that was going to happen at our project. They were going down 1.5 kilometres. We were going down 200 metres. So we were going to cause seismic activity. every time anybody worried about the pavements, there was a lot of complaints about we were going to dig up the roads, dig up the pavements. But actually, when you went and looked at the roads and looked at the pavements, they were dreadful before we came along. But everybody thought that we were making them somehow worse. And then you just have to get on top of it. And in the end, I just basically said, you know, everyone was whinging, blaming us. We weren't responsible for the blue sign. We weren't responsible for the Anglian water diversion. We weren't, you know, there was another solar farm proposal. There was somebody decided to do a pop-up campsite because that was the workers working on the project, obviously. And then the football match, because you just have to get ahead of these people because they're out to sort of, you know, forever be in your ear as to what the problem is. Yeah, it didn't help. The 8 Mile tailback, there's a chap who writes for The Spectator and also writes for the Daily Mail in one of the villages. So we made the Daily Mail online and in the paper. My mum was quite proud, actually. I was not so proud because she didn't see the online comments. And the online comments were genuinely a little bit scary. So the one that got the highest likes, over 1,200 likes, was somebody saying, we can't afford all this eco stuff now, we just need to pause, let's get rid of it. All these green policies, this is just not the way forward. So that got like the most number. But then in reverse, somebody actually said, I'm backing the project, can't wait for this. We got 10 ups, and they still got 144 downs from the people online. And, you know, people tried to defend it, but it was really difficult. When people are trying to say this is a good thing, they were just getting knocked down every time they tried to back the project online. So anyhow, moving forward, we also had somebody who decided they were going to tell the Jockey Club in Newmarket that we were going to pollute all the internal water for the private water for all the studs by this project. Technically, the July racecourse, despite being the other side of the A14, is in our parish and they are a consultee. Unfortunately for him, I used to work with the head of the Jockey Club estate management team, so he rang me up, we spoke it through with the geologist and we got over it. But I hadn't really appreciated, for climate change deniers who really don't want things to change, they literally foam at the mouth and make your life living hell if you're not careful. They are really, really quite determined in their positioning. And that was quite a scary moment for me because we're not obligating anybody to join the heat network. You don't have to join. You can stay with your gas or your oil boiler and crack on. But to be so against something, I think is something you've got to prepare for because these people get quite organised in their anger. Anyhow, rolling the clock forward, the best thing about the district heat network is you can't see it. Okay, so we've got a historic conservation area, as I say, 42 listed properties, about a third of the village is social housing, 3 different housing associations. But what we did was nobody had no barriers to entry. So all the pipe network that we've put in goes straight into the property, pops up next to the house. And this is my co-director's house. So 2 pipes, a flow in, a flow out, and literally enters the home. In his understairs cupboard used to be this massive oil boiler on the floor, massive, huge thing. Now he's got something the size of a combi boiler in the same space. And basically that just acts like an umbilical cord. The water comes in, goes through the heat exchanger. It plumbed in exactly where the plumbing was with his central heating. So he had to change nothing about his central heating. And then the water flows out again at a slightly cooler temperature. But effectively, the interface being like the umbilical cord takes the water out, the water going around the village, and puts it into your internal heating system for hot water and central heating. So this is it. As soon as it was done, they covered it over. They put back the gravel. The tarmac is there. You can see where we've actually gone in, and it is a little bit brutal. This is a picture I took earlier on in the summer. This is a picture I took this morning with a bit more grass over the gravel. It was a bit shady, but you can't see it now. It's almost disappeared. But yet there's pipes supplying Mike with a carbon neutral district heat network, and you wouldn't know it was there. There's no green bling, and it works with his existing system. By contrast, I have a grade 2 listed house, used to be the shop in the village, and we have a cellar. So this was a slightly different take. So the pavement was dug up, and basically what's happened is the flow and return have gone into the cellar through the pavement. You can see it just being dug up there. And then I have a slightly bigger unit because I have a slightly bigger house with a funny layout, but effectively it's wall mounted. Only a woman wouldn't design it. There's a lot of space in here, but it's good for drying trainers. You can hang it on the pipes because they're kind of bendy. But basically, you compare my size to Mike's. So there's different sizes for different properties. It works whatever size of home that you happen to have. And the biggest thing for me is actually it's the global issues being tackled, literally the man and woman on the street and the people in their homes. And actually getting this message to people has proved quite challenging. We've put the heat interface unit in a festival type wagon. We have hauled it around the village, showing people what it looks like. We have done a lot of consultation in the village ourselves, telling people, encouraging people. One of the best things that happened was Greta coming along at the time and shouting about sustainability. That helped. And then for some people, this document was a little bit scary because they were going to phase out new oil boilers from 26. That did put a little bit of a focus on the mind. But what we learned from this was we thought it meant all new oil boilers. What they actually meant was any replacement oil boiler as well. And so this really did focus the mind. But this is effectively 2035. We've lived through that experience of thinking, crikey, there's some pressure coming. So this is what is coming for everybody who's on gas or other forms of heating. You will not be able to get a new boiler come 2035. Now, there'll be plenty of people that run out there and go and get one. But this is the reality that most households are facing. So they've got to think about what is the alternative. This is Barry. Barry's come from Brassington Community Heating. He came down an awful lot. He was trying to do this, but really struggled in his village. But hands up to Heating Upper Hayford over in Oxfordshire and also Heating Bilderston. They have already done their trial boreholes. They're moving a lot further forward. They've got some real momentum behind them and some excellent people in their community that are really driving it through. This is a picture from the summer. So I was saying to you about the borehole field. So it looked brutal, it was muddy, it looked terrible, but this was it in the summer. We've got a fen harrier that now has been over here, and it's gone back to being a chalk grassland and back in the stewardship of the farmer. We've had sheep grazing in here over this summer. The pipe network is 80 centimetres below the ground. It will never be able to be ploughed, but it's gone back to grazing just as it was before. And actually, we've churned it really up. We've done some additional biodiversity and planting, and it absolutely looks beautiful. This is it this morning. I tried to go and get a better picture, but I just couldn't get the height. But all I'm saying is it just looks exactly the same, if not better than what it was before. But, you know, no one is ever going to be able to build on this land. No one's going to be able to do anything further on that land. So if you've got opportunity for bits of land, playing fields, open spaces that you value, dare I say it, even, well, if we could have done, we'd have put it the other side of the village. We have a rival village on the other side. You know, we'd never want to join with them. We have a grunge hockey match Boxing Day. You know, it really is a big thing. But you can stop things from coalescing because it's there. It can just be open space. It's properly protected green space now with the boreholes underneath that field. So what have we done? Well, we think we've saved over 1,000 tonnes of carbon annually. We have, you know, managed to bring people on the journey and get them onto the system. We know that there's lots of other villages interested, but we've still got 25,000 homes just in our county to go and sort. And as of today, we've got 34 homes on the system. We've got 108 homes now connected externally or on the system. And we hope by the end of next year, we'll have about 160 homes on out of about 200 in the core. So there's always going to be homes that aren't going to join for whatever reason. Some of them are new, got air source heat pumps, but we think we're doing a pretty good job. And we have a 5-year programme to get everybody who wants to be on connected to the system. And there's a photo of us just looking inside the energy centre.